So what is great branding? Is it a logo? Is it a good domain? Is it great packaging? Great branding, I think, is all of the above and sometimes none of the above. Today, we're going to talk about what really great branding really is and what it isn't. And not only from the perspectives of dropshipping or D2C e-commerce, but from traditional retail brands as well.
Well, as you are the expert, what is real great branding then?
So maybe let's talk about what great branding is not exactly, or what does not exactly make a great brand. So Simon, you probably have some perspectives on this given all your supply chain experience.
Yeah, great branding, it means a lot of things. So you can look at it up from the consumer perspective. You can look it up from just when you do B2B, what is the brand experience that companies have? But supply chain, it just basically comes down to, in our case, for D2C brand is, what is the consumer experience? That covers everything. And for that experience, you have to nail down the whole supply chain from whatever touch point there might be, whether that is online, offline, the product, the packaging, everything that comes with it. That's something that is, for me, the real branding. But to be honest, I've never built a product brand. You have. So you probably have your own thoughts on what a real brand should be.
Yes, I do. And actually, not only from my own experience building what I believe are real great brands, but also many years back, I was actually involved in building my own dropshipping stores as well. So I consumed a lot of dropshipping courses back in the day. And I remember actually one of the top advices for a dropshipping store is to, for example, if you're selling a dog toy and you create a domain that has dog toy, cooldogtoys.com or .co, whatever. And that's actually a perfect example of what I believe is not really great branding at all and sometimes counterproductive. Those who have dogs in the US, for example, you shop somewhere like Chewy. And, that is an example of a name that is associated with the products themselves, but it's not dogfoodsandtoys.com. And I think that especially certain types of dropshippers and those early on in their e-commerce, D2C e-commerce career, sometimes the idea of branding really ends at too much of a surface level view and not enough around the entire experience and the relationship that you develop with the customer.
Yeah, I remember we had a client that actually had a really nicely branded product in a local warehouse. I think it was the US. Everything was best of the best. Packaging, fully aligned, colors, inserts, everything was nice. And then on the side of that, they also were running some products via the dropshipping model with a wide envelope, no inserts, just the product. There's not hardly any branding on the product itself. And that same consumer buying a product from the US warehouse versus the China warehouse was a complete different consumer experience, which was the same store, the same brand. So just having the store there is one thing, and then getting it delivered to the consumer and making an experience of opening the parcel. I'm excited for the product. Kind of the disappointed. You can see the disappointment in the eyes of the consumer when they receive this wide envelope, like, is this it? That's like what some of the brands do so amazingly well. Like when you have an Apple product delivered, it's how well this all designed and customized and that experience itself. But it's very simple to solve. We just advise them, share with us how you have it packaged. What is your designs? Share with us. We get it in China. Same way. It doesn't have to be different. And so they're like, actually, that makes sense.
Yeah. So actually, you just mentioned Apple. Do you use an iPhone? What kind of phone do you use, Simon?
Yeah, Apple.
Yeah,
Apple.
So me as well. Maybe most people in a lot of markets actually spend literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on Apple products. I certainly have. Like every 2 years, 3 years, I give Apple another $1,000. Now it's probably $1,200, and I'm pretty happy about it. Well, I'm not the most happy about it, but still, I feel pretty good about it, right? And why is that, right? Like, what does Apple even mean? Like, the Apple logo doesn't even make any sense at all, right? Apple is not coolexpensivephone.com, right? But I love Apple products because I personally trust that it is maybe not the absolute highest quality, right? But I think it is a consistent level of high quality that I can trust that every single time that I upgrade my phone, that it is going to be of what I think is good value and, has everything that I actually need. And I enjoy going to Apple stores, to be honest. I enjoy the experience, right? And it makes me happy. Well, it makes me reasonably okay to spend a couple $1,000
until you get your wallet out.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Right?
Well, I don't look at my credit card account afterwards for sure, right? And you know what? Apple is obviously a rather extreme example. It's obviously a premium brand, right? 10 years ago, we were buying phones for like $200 and still thinking that was expensive. But they're a perfect example of a company that just completely changed a paradigm in terms of like, no one before Apple thought that you can possibly sell a phone for more than a couple $100s. And they completely changed that. And that is what great branding really does. Now, let me actually talk about the other extreme, Starbucks. I just finished my daily cold brew. Why do I go to Starbucks every single day and pay $5 for what I honestly think is mediocre coffee, right? It's not that great. It's overpriced, but I do it. And I do it every time I travel. I mean, I literally get like 300 cups of cold brew around the world every time I travel for business, because I know that no matter what, if there is a Starbucks, my cold brew is going to taste the same, above mediocre, but it's going to taste the same. I know that I can use my Starbucks card, and I know the experience is going to be the same. I know it's going to have Wi-Fi. I know I can sit down and get some work done. And that is what a great brand is. It's about developing that relationship with your customer, with someone like me, so that it is a natural choice to repurchase or revisit. I mean, what does Starbucks mean? What does their logo mean? It literally makes no sense at all. So this is what I mean when I say that a great brand doesn't necessarily have to have some perfect logo or perfect, color scheme, perfect domain. Most of the time, the really great brands, they speak for themselves because of the experience that they provide, which is really everything about the brand. And the logo and the colors is really just a reminder that, Starbucks exists or that you're buying an Apple product.
So then I'm getting curious, because these are global brands. They have marketing teams all over the world. They can get the best of the industry. But what is that then? What can D2C brands then learn from that and take away and implement tomorrow or even today?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is, well, first actually understanding your customer base and what you're trying to do, and then figuring out what that connection should be to them. And now when I mean by connection, I literally mean everything, every single touch point, not just what you see, what you feel. And depending on the brand or business itself, it could be very, very deep. It could be their actual supply chain. It could be their logistics. It could be their shipping methods. Why do I always buy everything from Amazon when I'm in the US at least, right? Because, well, actually unique things I buy from, brands themselves, right? But if I want to buy replacement toilet paper, everyday products, I just buy from Amazon because of their 2-day shipping, sometimes 1-day shipping. And that's nothing to do with what they look like, what they feel like, but it's actually their logistics themselves. And, so I want to ask you, Simon, actually, because of all your experience deep in the supply chain and operations, I'm sure you have some examples of great brands that are examples, not just because of their front end experience, but actually because of their supply chain and logistics setup.
Yeah, we see these. Obviously, product is one thing, and optimizing the product and then customizing it based on the feedback you get. So you also get the loop in from consumers saying, this I don't like, or this can be improved, or that feedback is perfect to upgrade the product. And then you also can compete with drop shippers, technically, because it's no longer one buy purchase. You actually have to buy bulk to be able to get it produced in higher quantity. But then that's just the product side, and then getting it shipped obviously as fast as possible with a good experience. Well, what we see that a lot of these brands are starting to realize as well, and are doing the work, is building a community. So let's say you're in the travel niche. Why not share more about traveling, about destinations, about tips, about what things to bring, about checklist of what to bring for your next destination, feeding them with ideas. And you leverage your social media to have a communication and interaction with your consumers or potential consumers. And then obviously once in a while you put in your product in there as well. But because you're already given the value, you're already giving value, valuable tips, valuable experiences, it just elevates and builds a trust. And that's also why you keep going to the Starbucks. You trust that there is going to be coffee, there is going to be a Wi-Fi, there's going to be a chair for you to sit on and get your work done. There's got to be a moment for you to get started for the day. The expectation and the trust that it's going to work, that it's going to be in line with your expectations as well, every single time, wherever you go. And it doesn't even mean you have to be creative yourself. You can use other people's contents as well in your posts, and you can even refer to them, which then also creates more visibility.
Yes.
And then having that community with not just you giving tips, but just leveraging whatever content is out there that is tailored to your niche, to your audience, exactly what you said, the audience you want to reach, and giving them the value of what they're looking for, or questions you might have. Why even did you start this product, this brand? What was the logic behind? That's what we see with some of our clients is they want to build the best brand, but they're not visible themselves. And then always the question is, if you would have to invest in Elon Musk or Tesla, which one will you choose? Most people, they'll choose the Elon Musk because he's going to build the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. You build an amazing brand, but your face is unfamiliar. Nobody knows the person behind the brand. We always also trigger people, okay, step out, make it personal, let people connect with you, share your journey, let them understand what product they're buying and who they're buying it from. And that's, I think, part of the consumer experience where I don't know the person behind Starbucks personally, but at least with Apple, that's kind of obvious that creates the connection. It's also the journey that people feel connected with.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes. And actually, you know what? You mentioned trust a few times, and that trust is so important, and it can go both ways as well. So having that great brand connection and trust is just pretty much guaranteed, if you do it right, is going to allow you to get repeat customers just like that, without really kind of doing too much, right? However, the other way around is once you build that trust and the customer has this relationship with what they think your brand is, then you can also damage that trust as well. I'll give you the perfect example. So I really like wearing simple white t-shirts. I used to buy them from Uniqlo. By the way, Uniqlo is a great example of you don't have to be the best brand, right? You don't have to be expensive. You don't have to be super premium, right? You just want to be successful, right? And that could actually mean simple and very cost efficient, right? Or, relatively cheap at least. And that's what Uniqlo was to me. When Uniqlo first started, it's all about basics and very simple, not many product varieties, and it's cheap and it's easy. I used to be able to go in and I knew exactly where the pack of white t-shirts were, and I'd just get a pack and just be out in literally 2 minutes. And then what happened recently, a couple years ago, they started introducing more varieties of different types of white t-shirts. I mean, I know there's probably a reason why they do that, right? One time I went in and I got the wrong pack of t-shirts, and I was like, what is this? This is not Uniqlo to me. I go to Uniqlo so I can get the exact same thing every single time. And I got the wrong thing one time, and then I went back and I tried to look for the t-shirts that I knew that I wanted, but there were 4 different versions and they're all in packs. So, I just had no idea. And I never shopped at Uniqlo ever again. I started buying my white t-shirts from somewhere. Well, actually, I had so many white t-shirts that I didn't have to buy white t-shirts for a while. But Uniqlo lost me forever as a customer because my connection with them was simple, straightforward, convenient, and low price. And a couple of those points, they have shifted. And now I'm sure they're doing very, very well and they attracted different customers, right? But they lost me as a customer. And this is one of the reasons why both how it's important to really build that trust, but also you need to also really understand your customers and what is your actual relation with your customers. And sometimes it's not what you assume. And you want to maintain that. And, I think that a lot of times I do see in e-commerce, and maybe you have some examples of this, Simon, later, is a brand really scales up because of a single product, let's say, or a couple products. Sometimes the customer literally really cares about that or literally cares about that experience. And it's a very common strategy that I don't think is always correct to say, okay, now I want to expand product lines. I want to sell more in this niche or broad niche. That actually many times starts to turn the customer off because that's a disconnect against what that customer thought that your brand stands for. So I don't know, Simon, I mean, you work with tons of brands before. I don't know if you have some examples you saw of that before.
Well, this comes down to the product innovations can be a good thing and a bad thing. And the bad thing could be really the branding. It sometimes doesn't make sense. So you have to be very sensitive as well what extra products you want to bring under your brand. And that's why we also see some of our clients they have a successful brand, which is sometimes even a single product with a few colors or a few variations. And instead of adding more brands to it, then they start another store with a new brand with the other product. Because then in this way, it's for the consumer much easier. And it will become confusing because you have this multi-product store, which completely doesn't have any brand experience because there's no messaging behind. And you have a branded store. And then I remember you and me having a discussion with a client in Lithuania. It was like selling 2 random products that were not related. I think one was like a inflatable bed, the other was a lamp. It's like, why are you selling it on the same store? He said, because I want it to actually be a more artistic. I really want to have design. I want to have a designer shop. I said, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then your value, your positioning of a brand is actually, I want to have a designer, the unique designer brand. I don't have to sell thousands of the same. I want something unique, and I want to service my audience in that way. And they're expecting me to provide them with this kind of products.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you shouldn't build a business that has, too many products, right? I mean, you take like something like Shein, for example, right? Shein has, I don't know how many SKUs, like tens, hundreds of thousands of SKUs, maybe a million SKUs, so many SKUs, and all the time launching new SKUs as well, right? So obviously that model works, but Shein, in the customer's view, that's just what Shein is. Like, they're always launching new things. They're always cheap, and they ship from China. And honestly, kind of low quality, but then whatever, like it's cheap, and you can just like build an outfit just like that, right? And for them, because of that, like they're all about cheap, fast, and a lot of variety, right? So that is their brand. So variety itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but you got to be clear on what your brand positioning is. I'll actually use ecom ops as an example of that, right? So we really specifically focus on China direct fulfillment. And we have clients and potential clients asking us all the time, do you have US fulfillment? Can you do drop shipping? Can you do complex product development, right? Technically, if we wanted to, we can do all of that, but we won't do it perfectly. So for us, Simon and I both, we've decided that ecom ops as a business is we're going to be the best in China fulfillment and nothing else. And that is our strategy. There's plenty of companies out there who do a lot of different things, and they have warehouses around the world, and that's their model, and that's totally fine. I think ecom ops is a perfect example of really understanding and being clear about what our value is to the clients, being able to articulate that, and not being afraid to just not do anything that we're not actually good at because we risk actually damaging our core brand.
I remember that I think Alibaba was in 51 different industries, so it doesn't have to be a bad thing to be all over the place, but at least you have the resources to be able to back that up. But your example with Uniqlo is, I think, is a very good one, is that they had to go all in with that decision of variety of products, with that one white shirt suddenly being replicated into 5 different shirts. They had to basically have a team thinking about this for months, designing up the whole process, looking for the factories, designing the product, bringing it in, deciding what are the difference between these 5, and basically they lost you as a customer. What is also a way of what's the product innovation that we see within branding is that you don't have to go through that whole process, extensive process of 6 months, 8 months, 12 months planning of how you're going to implement your new strategy to reach a wider audience. You can start much more low key. And what I mean with low key is you have a product in mind, try it, introduce it to your audience, especially if you have a community, get them feedback, maybe even launch a unique product and say, hey, we're going to have 50 of these. Let's see how it goes. You're not losing any client with that or consumer in that aspect by just leveraging what's available without going immediately all in and maybe damaging everything you've built up in the past years, but just testing it with smaller quantities, with a lean supply chain, with limited investment, not too much overthinking, because when you overthink, you tend to be wrong because everything is suddenly start to include everything. And sometimes it's unpredictable. We've seen products succeed where like, really? This one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All the time. And it just made sense. This is a good product, but everyone is always like, what's the next winning product? It's much more or less about the product. It's much more about the niche and the value and the proposition that you have, and then testing it, and then you make use. That's why these players, a lot of them global brands, are now being sidetracked almost by Shein, Temu. What's going on? How is it possible that they can do this? Can we do this? Yes, you can. You can elevate your brand with uniqueness, with a Christmas product, with an Easter product, with a Valentine's product. Just have a one-time launch. That uniqueness, especially in the gaming, we see that a lot, right? That uniqueness of a product that's a limited edition. That's gonna be a really game changer, I think, in the industry. That's very positive for your brand itself.
Yeah, and actually, you're mentioning testing and actually getting customer feedback. So I do firmly believe that drop shipping or even kind of launching a simple e-commerce brand where you hold some maybe private label stock, I think that has its place. I think it's great for validating ideas and great for testing. Now, I do firmly believe that if you really want to build a long-term business, it has to go beyond that. However, and this is where those in the audience who might be running dropshipping brands or maybe more private label e-commerce brands, don't completely revamp everything. Don't just start a new brand. Don't start from scratch. You have something that is incredibly valuable that typically even large retail brands don't have the luxury of. You have data. You have existing customers. Especially if you have even a dropshipping store that has seen some kind of success, you have a customer base. They bought from you for some reason. And honestly, sometimes the reason is not exactly what you expect. Trust me, if you have a successful dropshipping store, it's not just because you manage ads very effectively. That's part of it, obviously, right? But if you have a lot of customers, they actually buy from you for a reason. And now, obviously, it's probably going to be because of your ad creative, but it may not be exactly what appeals to them like you think. So I'll give you a personal example. Pillar Learning, Cody, the storytelling robot, which is the product that I used to run that went our Shark Tank before, when we envisioned the product, so it is a smart toy, IoT, storytelling product for kids. When we first envisioned the product, our angle was AI, AI for kids, high tech for kids. And, that was kind of all the buzz during that time. When we started selling it, actually, it just didn't do very well. And then we started talking to customers and we started understanding like what customers actually like about Cody. And what they loved about Cody is actually, they don't care about the AI. We realized that most parents don't really care about providing AI technology to their kids, right? Which actually makes sense. Yeah. What they loved is that their kids engage with Cody and there's no screen. It actually made it so that they can be entertained without their iPad. And that was a huge light bulb moment for us. And then we started shifting our entire angle towards less screen time. Content that's good for your kids, that they're going to engage in, but it's a cute toy and it doesn't have a screen. So this is a perfect example of like actually listening to your customers, realizing why they actually purchase from you and doubling down on that and like kind of build your experience around that. And for those of you, especially if you're dropshippers or starting private label brands, you may have thousands, tens of thousands of customers. Email them, like pick up the phone and call them and literally just ask them, hey, you purchased from my store 2-3 times. Why? Why did you purchase from me? And I think you'll be surprised sometimes at what they say. And trust me, it's not because they're not going to say because you make great Facebook ads. It's definitely not because of that, but it's something about your brand that appeals to them and something that you should consider doubling down on to build that relationship with other customers as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of marketing agencies. One of their conversations always with their clients then at least is, have you ever run any email campaigns or SMS campaigns or anything like that? Because it is about visibility and reaching your clients and also getting an understanding why they even buy from you. Back when I was in China, we were working with European brands, helping them sell in China. And then there was an Italian shoe brand for men. So the target audience was like men, 50-plus-year-old men, businessmen, fancy leather shoes. And then we started doing the research, like who is there, the one actually buying the products? It was not the men, it was their wives who were buying it. So then actually your whole marketing campaign, you were targeting men on Facebook, 50-plus, and nobody's buying. You should have targeted the wives of the men who actually are the ones purchasing these kind of stuff, which is fascinating that once you realize who's actually buying, then your branding obviously also changes to be tailored to that audience. And so it's less about the product itself. It's actually who is the one purchasing it.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, then there's stuff like Father's Day sales, right? Like clearly, like they're targeting buyers or family members who's purchasing for the father. It's a really great point because selling to men versus selling to women, they're completely different things. And, the messaging should actually be different, right? So that's a good point. And one thing that you talked about, like emails or text message strategy, or like building a community, for example. Like those are all very, very useful things for re-engagement. But I think too often they're seen as artificial ways to boost your LTV, to increase your repurchase rate. That is the wrong way to think about it. A great email strategy is not about selling all the time, right? And I do hear about this whole framework of like value, sell, value. Yes, there's frameworks around it. But you have to understand the fundamental reason why these frameworks exist, why they're effective. And it's really about how do you remind customers of your brand. And when the time comes, remind them that, hey, you need this product. Why not just buy from us? Or we launched a new product. Well, you trust us already, so might as well try it out, right? Or there is a Valentine's Day sale. It becomes obvious why they should repurchase from you. And in between, you provide them with value, engagement, interesting things that they actually care about. And this is not just email. This applies to SMS, applies to community strategy, social media strategy. So I think that if you're able to understand the fundamental reason why these things exist, and it all has to do with that relationship that you build and continue to maintain with your customers.
With that branding, obviously, you have to analyze who's opening, how many opens, how fast people are opening. So what I see with these Chinese companies that have done so well in the past years is they're using the data to the core, to like the minimum. Like Shein, just look at click rate and start production based on views, based on likes, based on clicks, everything that's related to the consumer interaction. It's not a physical interaction. It's a virtual interaction you have, but they're using that data to make predictions of what can result into a revenue or in a sale, which is fascinating on how innovative that is. And you can technically do that as well. As a brand owner, you would like to know who's buying it. And if I run a campaign or run my ads or I'm active on social media and I see how many views. If somebody is liking your post more, like many people viewing it or liking it, obviously it's becoming trendy. That's a topic you should stick with and look into further. And then maybe you get creative and even come with a product that works. And that's why you see all these influencers as well. It's like, I'm doing influencing. I have a lot of audience. I should start selling something, but I don't know what. It should be mine, or should I partner with a brand? That's kind of like the journey that's happening. But in the end, it comes down, okay, how do I have a personal brand and which products fit with my personal brand? Or I building a product that fits to my personal philosophy. And that's, I think, these two reverse questions that are very valuable for also your scalability. And then the scalability is not limited to your country. If you do it well, it can be a global thing. And obviously that brings a lot of other challenges with it. But the goal, I think, if you start any product or any brand, is how can I create this into a global brand? Or if not, just like us, we want to stick to fulfillment only. We could do more. We're not. Because I want to be the best brand in the US or the best brand in Europe or in the Netherlands where I'm from. If that's the choice, it's possible. But that's the philosophy. And it just narrows down your scope and it will just open up so many more new elements that you can then suddenly think of that will elevate your brand value for the long term.
I have two thoughts on what you just said. So one is on the utilizing or being very data-driven in your decisions, all right? So data-driven doesn't stop at making more money. Making more revenue is the outcome, but you can't skip the step of really when you're looking at your consumer purchase data, your goal is to better understand your consumer. That is the necessary middle step. And then once you understand your consumer, then you figure out how to better sell to them, how to improve the experience. And that's actually really important because you can't do everything. Even Apple is not perfect in every way. I mean, the price point, for example, is a big negative. I mean, like I'm not really that happy to spend that much money on my iPhones. But the thing is, they know their customers extremely well. They know that their customers are not that price sensitive. And they even increase their prices by like $100 every year, and still their customers buy it. That's because they fully understand their customer base. So when you're looking at data, yes, the ultimate goal is to generate more revenue to optimize your profits. However, don't forget the real deeper goal is to understand your customers better and how do you serve them better. And sometimes that actually means not actually doing certain things. I'll actually give you kind of another example where it's less very data driven is luxury products, luxury high-end watches, luxury high-end purses. Or if you go to Rolex, for example, try buying anything. They won't even sell it to you because no, we don't have stock. You got to wait for a year. You got to buy this other stuff first before we get your purse. That's part of their angle, to be honest. I mean, I guarantee you they can make more Hermes purses. Like, I guarantee you that because that's how production works. You can scale it up if you actually really want. However, it's part of their actual brand strategy to, have this waiting list. And they actually realize that their customer base that actually creates this perceived sense of extreme extra value. And, customers actually want to wait for it. And as a matter of fact, I bet that they actually, make more money. I mean, maybe not make more revenue, but at least make more profit by actually utilizing this model. But the only way they can do this is because they understand their customers. You as an e-commerce brand, if you tell your customer you got to wait a year to buy your like $20 product, pretty obvious that that's not going to work. All right. So, just really good examples of really sometimes opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So there's no clear answer on what necessarily a great brand is. The really only clear answer is what a brand should be is building that relationship with your customer and having your customer trust you and having your customer want to buy from you, regardless of what you do anything around marketing. And all your marketing campaigns, your email campaigns, that's just gravy. That's just reminding the customer to buy from you a little bit faster.
There's one nice hack, because if you are actually selling, you go into the Rolex store, there's a physical touch point with the consumer. With an online brand, that's much, much harder. Most of the time when I have a call with a client, I also ask them, so what does your day look like? I get up, I do that, you have your coffee, I do. And then one said, yeah, and then I'm just going to go through a list and I call a bunch of consumers. You do what? Yeah, I just call consumers. I see that orders are delivered. I just talk to them and hear from them what's their experience, what they feel, do they like it? Can I ask them any question? And sometimes they hang up on me, or sometimes they have no idea who I am. But I do get a lot of input that is helping me to get an understanding. Is it aligned with what I want it to be? And if you're not clear, what is it that I want to be? I think that's cool because you don't always have a touch point when you run an online business. Creating a touch point is actually, whether it's on social media where you get feedback or on your store itself with reviews, but actually picking up the phone and calling your consumer. There's not many who do that. They should, but not many do it.
More should, that's for sure. I mean, there's a reason why Simon and I travel a lot to meet our clients, because it is one of the most important parts of what we do, to actually understand what our clients need for ecom ops and then adapt our own processes and our own brand to better serve them. That brings up a very important point in that you as a business or any kind of business doesn't deserve to exist just to make money, okay? I mean, I'll just be very blunt with it. Like if you own a D2C e-commerce brand, you don't deserve to make money just in itself. What you should be really thinking about is how do you actually best serve your customers' needs? How do you best address your customers' pain points? Why does your business even deserve to exist or survive or even scale up? The money, the revenue, the profits, that comes later. The biggest companies in the world, they get to where they are. They were able to even gain traction initially because customers want to buy from them at a price point that they think is reasonable enough. So really, I suggest everyone to think about it maybe a little bit backwards, right? Like it's not about you making money. It's about how do you identify a specific customer base? How do you understand their needs? How do you figure out a hopefully creative, novel way, a different way to best serve those needs or to build and maintain that connection? And only then do you deserve to actually make money over the long term. These days, especially most of our ecom ops clients, they are actually building brands and thinking about it the right way, right? And these are the type of companies and brands that are still selling for years. And I do believe they're still selling for years. Everyone keeps on saying dropshipping is dead. Well, Dropshipping is kind of dead in the way that like you can't really build a sustainable long-term business dropshipping. I don't think you can even build a sustainable long-term business just private labeling or rebranding something, right? The only way you can build a really successful business is actually building a true brand. And the thing is, like, especially dropshippers out there, stop comparing yourself to other dropshippers. Like, don't try to be the best dropshipper. Compare yourself to actual brands. Like, why do you want to be the best dropshipper? Why do you want to be better than dropshippers even? Why don't you try to be like Apple or even 10%, 1% of Apple and think about how they do and think long-term and think about your customers' needs and how do you actually address those needs and hopefully in a novel way.
I think that pretty much wraps it up. Let's just maybe some final takeaways. Dario, you want to kick off? What do you want to close off with?
Yeah, Simon. So great conversation. A few things that, I like everyone to take away from this conversation is thinking about branding, not just on a surface level, not just about logos or colors, right? Those are important things, but those come after the fact. The most important thing in building a great brand is developing that relationship with your customer. But before you do that, you got to understand your customer first. What do they actually need? What do they actually want? What are their pain points that maybe are not solved by anything else in the market? And what is the experience that they are looking for? And then how do you provide them with that experience? And that's key. Not just the product, not just any like outside view things, but the actual experience, which can mean a whole range of different things. Keep that in mind and really think about the customer first. Why does your brand deserve to exist? It deserves to exist and make money because you actually achieve a fundamental need the customer has, whether it's a pain point or experience that they crave and need.
Yeah, it's about these touch points and creating the touch points, potentially physically or virtually, but at least having touch point to connect with the consumer, the end consumer, your clients. But also, one of our brands just got us something shipped. They got a return and they said, I didn't even know we're packaging like this. So it's also something like you have to be aware of how your consumers are receiving your parcels by asking them, but also by experiencing yourself and replicating that experience if that's matching with what you want it to be. I think that's very, very key because sometimes we expect that your brand is what it is. But if you don't have any touch point with to do some fact finding with, is this really what my brand also is and should be? That's something is trivial in actually scaling it to a higher level, reach a wider audience, even global audience potentially. And these touch points going to help you to become a long-term brand.
Thank you everyone for listening to the Ecom Ops podcast. This is Dayu and my host Simon. Hope you enjoyed learning about what we think real branding is and hope that brings some insights to grow your business for further success. Thank you everyone. See you guys next time.